Today, the MTA and the LIRR Workers Union back at the bargaining table trying to hammer out a deal as workers are threatening to walk off the job in less than a week. We're going to see a deal done here before hundreds and not thousands of commuters are going to be forced to try a different way to get to work come Monday. And we will head to Jersey City, where police officers are mourning the loss of one of their own who was killed in the line of duty following yet another senseless act of violence. Police say the alleged shooter was already wanted in another homicide. Plus, Mayor Bill de Blasio, is getting ready to say ciao to New York, at least temporarily. De Blasio, you see, is gearing up for a trip to Italy. Is it too soon for him to be skipping town for more than a week? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, tonight, we start off by heading to the rails, where the MTA and the LIRR Union are heading back to the bargaining table, albeit briefly today. Now, workers, as you know by now, are threatening to walk off the job in just 6 days if a new contract deal is not reached. The MTA is offering rail workers a 17% raise over 7 years and also would like workers to make health benefit contributions, particularly those new employees. However, the unions representing the workers, they're asking for that same 17% raise, but over 6 years. And the workers do not want to dish out any money towards health benefits. Well, today marks yet another day, though, without a deal. And a lot of us who thought this was just posturing, they'd have a deal by this week already. More than us, we just get a little nervous how this thing could play out. Samantha Liebman, she joins us now live from Midtown Manhattan today with the very latest. Sam?
Well, these were the first formal talks since last week when the union submitted their counteroffer. That, of course, was rejected. Now the two sides pointing fingers at each other. But the bottom line is that commuters are now going to have to prepare for a painful commute come Monday morning. Now the talks broke down about an hour after they started, with a possible strike less than 6 days away. The MTA saying that the unions haven't moved. The MTA offered a 17% raise over 7 years, as you mentioned. The unions wanted that, but over 6 years. But the real sticking point is that the MTA wants to fund the raise by making future hires pay more toward their benefits. They say that's in line with past union agreements, but the unions object to that, and the MTA says the union's counteroffer wasn't enough to fund that raise.
We are disgusted, we are appalled, and we are going to do what we can till the very last minute to try to prevent this from happening. But we did not come in with a counter that was worthless.
In the spirit of negotiations, it's give and take. We've done giving, they've done taking. But they haven't moved at all, slightly, very smallly from their position. Until they're ready to move, there's no reason to have negotiations.
Meanwhile, with no new talks scheduled, the unions are calling on Governor Cuomo to step in, which he said he would not do. This comes after last week, Chairman Thomas Prendergast went to Washington to ask for help from Congress. They told both sides to get back to the table, and that's where we're at right now. Now, the governor did step in at the last minute to help broker a deal between New York City transit workers and the MTA, and in this case, he would have to step in pretty soon because, according to the MTA, they would have to start locking down the system even before that Sunday deadline. But the unions say that could be as early as Wednesday, so we could see service cuts as early as Wednesday. Right now, we're live at MTA headquarters in Midtown. I'm Samantha Liebman. Back to you, Rich.
All right, Samantha, thank you. What a mess. Let's bring in our panel right now. No, they're not the mess. This situation is Jeannie Zaino, so much more. Professor of Political Science at Iona College, Professor of Campaign Management at NYU. Dominic Carter, you know him, you love him, political journalist and author. And Andrew Whitman, Senior Political Correspondent. Okay, a lot to get into here. We've got the outlines of a contingency plan. But let's be honest, we thought this was all posturing. They're not that far apart. I mean, they agree on the percentage raise. They agree over the years, 1 year less. It really seems that the sticking point is, for not current workers, but prospective new hires, that they're going to have to put money into the pension system. That's usually not that hard to give because it's not coming out of their pockets. It's the new hires. I guess part of this is there's so many generational families that are involved. a dad doesn't want to look at his son or his kid or whatever and say, yeah, you're going to have to give that I didn't. Do you think this is still just a lot of talk and in the end there's a deal, or are you starting to wonder, could we start to see some actual service cuts before this week's out when the clock ticks 12?
I think there's going to be a deal because I don't see Governor Cuomo in an election year allowing this to go to a strike. So I think he's going to come in at the last minute. He's going to do, as Samantha mentioned, what he did before. He's going to come in at the last minute and make a deal. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is hinging on a very narrow issue, which is payment to pensions for future employees who are not even at the you're working right now. But for people who aren't in that sector, how many people in the private sector are paying into their health care, their benefits? Most of us. So this is, something that I think the union may have a difficult time making sense of with the public. A 17% raise over 6 or 7 years and a 4% payment into the pensions. To many people in the public is not going to seem like giving that much. And so, while I see they haven't had a contract for 4 years, it does raise some questions as to whether from a public relations stance they can, actually make this work.
On the political front, Gina mentioned it's an election year. Magically, that makes things get done. However, a lot of people gave this governor a little heat here because he tried to pass the buck to D.C. to solve the problem. They're like, this is not a Washington problem. This is a New York problem. It wasn't shocking that the New York congressional delegation didn't get any love in D.C. to solve this problem. People thought we lost 2 or 3 days here at least with that thing being floated. In fact, his old man, Governor Cuomo, Mario, he brokered a deal in the 11th hour when he was looking at the same thing because he got the MTA to basically cave here on a deal. I don't think that the MTA is going to cave on anything. If he can't get the union to give on this thing, we could have a problem on our hands.
Both sides are going to give. I agree with the professor and your premise that you made. In an election year, there's just no way, none, that Governor Cuomo is going to permit this strike to go on. He does not believe in taking gambles, Richard. Now you're looking at posturing from the union and from management, each side trying to call each other's bluff. They will go up to the 11th hour, and then I believe at that time a deal will be made. And then there's something else to consider here that's political. There is no way in the world Mayor de Blasio goes on his vacation to Europe, to Italy, and 2 days later there's a strike. It would just be a public relations disaster. So the mayor has already been given assurance that this thing will be resolved.
And the mayor's already said if the strike happens, I'll delay my trip or I'll postpone the trip or something like that. So no, I don't think there's much to worry about there. Cuomo, I don't think has gotten involved yet or passed the buck to Washington because it wasn't close enough to the deadline. And he didn't have the leverage to sort of force.
He tried to have Washington solve it, and Washington said, no, it's not our problem.
Cuomo is going to step in. Two predictions on this. Cuomo's going to step in and solve this thing, or at least take credit for solving this thing, probably Wednesday, maybe Thursday. It's just that last week was too far away from the deadline for Cuomo to be in a position where he had the leverage to force everybody to come together. And my guess is that the deal will be cut from 7 years to 6 years. That's a win for the union. And it'll be that the newer workers do make payments into their health care plans. That's a win for the MTA. There's a little room for both sides to make the concession. It's just a matter of,
And especially if you think of Governor Cuomo, as you mentioned, having watched his father go through this and then lose that election. I mean, not specifically because of this issue, but it certainly didn't help. You know for a fact that he is not going to allow himself to be put in this situation.
I think if I had to bet that you guys are right, but the only thing I'd say is you guys would have said on Friday that this thing would have been resolved.
No, not this early. The union.
They walked out of negotiations.
But Richard,
today.
you have to have theater for the unions. It's got New Yorkers have to feel, or not just New Yorkers, people throughout the tri-state area. We have to all be nervous. Dun-dun-dun, news bulletin. The system is about to shut down. That's what the union is doing right now. They will wait until the 11th hour,
Let's just be
and
clear,
then they will cut
so
a deal.
The people who aren't part of history. It's not like it's never happened before. We've had strikes before. We've detailed it, okay? And they've been not strikes without little headaches here. You talk to some people who lived in Queens who saw half of Long Island flood in there to try and get in. I remember a little bit at Forest Hills where the cars were all over the sidewalks. This thing, we've had problems with this before. We're talking about a whole lot of people, tens of thousands of people. I mean, the MTA putting out ads, figure out your own way, maybe work from home, 30,000 of you, and that's a fraction of the folks we're talking about. Again, I'm not trying to just do hyperbole because it's good TV. I think you're right, but I'm not as 100% sure as you guys, like this can't happen.
But
it's happened before.
But that's exactly why Governor Cuomo is not going to risk in an election year allowing that to happen again. He saw this with his father, 20 years ago. He's not going to let it happen again. You're right, it would be disastrous to have the largest transit strike that we'd see, happening under his watch. And my question is, where has Astorino been on this? He had a little, email go out. He had some stuff on his website. He should be making more of this, and he hasn't.
Friday or Saturday is when I predict they will shake hands.
Okay, so you think that they
the very
do some?
last
Do you
minute.
think they cut some services starting Wednesday, like they're saying?
Of course, that plays into all the drama. And then that allows the governor to come in on his white horse and solve everything.
You cynic. All right. We're going to take a quick commercial break here right now. But before I do, I want to remind you, go over to Facebook and Twitter and answer our question for you. If there is a strike, and I know the table says poo to that, but if there is one, who are you going to blame? You're going after the union here or the MTA or maybe the governor? When we come back, though, we heard a really sad story, and it's Jersey City, where police are reporting a man who said murder would be his claim to fame. He shot and killed this man, a young police officer who was on the job for less than a year. We'll have that story after this.